Mary was a simple woman who loved nature. She liked the quiet beauty of flowers, trees, and the soft breeze that made leaves dance. But life had not been kind to her. After her husband passed away, she felt lost. Grief is a strange thing, it makes you search for comfort in places you never expected. For Mary, that place was a garden. But it wasn't hers. It belonged to an old man named Mr. Thomas. He was 74 years old, quiet but always watching. His wife had passed away years ago, and his home, along with his once beautiful garden, had grown silent. The first time Mary saw him, he stood on his porch, his sharp eyes following her. His gaze wasn't scary, but it made her heart beat faster. It used to be her favorite place, he muttered as he looked at the messy, overgrown garden. She wouldn't like it this way. His voice was rough, like someone who had spent too long in silence. Mary could hear the sadness in his words, and something inside her understood. She had felt that same emptiness before. She looked at the dying garden and then at him. "Then let's bring it back," she said with a small smile. At first, Mr. Thomas only watched her from the porch as she worked. Sometimes, when she packed up to leave, he would say a quiet, "Thank you." But as time passed, things began to change. He started coming closer, asking about the flowers she was trimming. He told her stories about his late wife, Susan. She loved roses, he said one day, his fingers brushing a red petal. Said they reminded her of love, beautiful, but sharp if you're not careful. His words stayed with Mary. Roses, love, and thorns. She understood that feeling too well. She had lost her husband 2 years ago and had felt every thorn since. But something about working in the garden with Mr. Thomas felt different. The pain didn't feel as sharp anymore. Maybe, just maybe, thorns didn't hurt as much when you weren't facing them alone. One warm afternoon, Mary was kneeling by the flower beds, wiping sweat from her face. When she looked up, she noticed Mr. Thomas standing close by. He wasn't on the porch this time. He was just a few feet away, watching her with a thoughtful look. "You're good at this," he said softly. His eyes met hers, and she felt a warmth inside her chest. Bringing life back to something almost gone. Mary smiled. "You have to be gentle," she said, tilting her head. "If you're too rough, you'll break them. But if you're too soft, they'll never grow strong." She wiped the dirt from her hands and looked at him. "Kind of like people." His lips twitched, just a small smile, but it was the first time she had seen it. "Is that so, Mary?" he asked, his voice softer than before. From that day on, their conversations changed. They no longer just talked about plants. They spoke about life, love, and the loneliness that sneaks in when you least expect it. One evening, as the sun painted the sky gold, Mary sat on the old stone bench near the roses. Mr. Thomas came and sat beside her without saying a word. They sat in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. She glanced at him and, for the first time, saw something different in his eyes. Not just sadness, but longing. She knew that look. She had felt it too. "Do you ever miss being close to someone?" she asked softly, turning to him. His eyes flicked to hers, and for a moment, she thought she had gone too far. But then, he nodded slowly. "Every single day," he admitted, his voice rough with honesty. His eyes stayed on hers, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Mary didn't know what came over her, but she reached for his hand. She laced her fingers with his, and he inhaled sharply. But he didn't pull away. "It's okay to want that," she said gently. "It's okay to feel." That night, she invited him inside, not for anything wild or reckless, just warmth. Sometimes, being close to someone is its own kind of healing. He hesitated at the door, his hand resting on the frame like he might change his mind. But then she smiled and said, "You're welcome here, Mr. Thomas." No expectations, just tea and company. He stepped inside, and for the first time in a long while, Mary didn't feel alone. They talked for hours, sipping tea and sharing stories. There were no big confessions, no dramatic moments. Just two people remembering what it felt like to be seen and valued. When he finally stood to leave, Mary walked him to the door. As she watched him go, something inside her shifted. The weight on her chest felt lighter. The loneliness didn't seem so heavy. The next morning, when she stepped into the garden, the roses looked brighter. The air felt warmer. Maybe it was just the sunrise, or maybe it was something more. People think gardens are about beauty, the colors, the flowers, the perfect shape of each leaf. But they are wrong. Gardens are about patience, about resilience, about learning to grow again after the storm. Mr. Thomas and Mary were not just tending to plants. They were tending to each other. And what started as a chance to bring life back to a forgotten place became something more. A reminder that no matter how tangled the roots, something beautiful could still grow. Thank you so much for watching our video. Please subscribe to watch more.